What is going on, YouTube? I am Lamont at Large. Today we're in St. Louis, Missouri. We're going to talk about a horrific murder that occurred right down the street where I'm walking right now. This is a crime that you will not hear your favorite true crime YouTubers talk about. Do you want to know why? I'm going to tell you why here momentarily. Let's get right into this. Slowly but surely, this neighborhood is becoming quite a decent area to live, but it wasn't always like that. Back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, this place was considered a bad neighborhood. There was a lot of prostitution. There was a lot of drugs going on in this section of St. Louis. We're going to go to February 28, 1983. We got two men in this area. They're going around junking. They're looking for stuff to steal, I guess. They would go through abandoned houses, abandoned apartments, take copper wire, look for metal to recycle, basically anything they could just sell for whatever they want to use the money for. They go to an abandoned apartment complex right on this very block, right down the street right here, 5635 Clemens Avenue. So they break into the apartment. They're looking around. There's no power, of course. It's dark. Their eyes are trying to get used to the darkness. And they go downstairs, and one of the men lights a cigarette. So when the room is lit up, he notices that there's somebody laying in the corner. So he gets startled a little bit, and he flicks his lighter again, and he puts it on the person laying down and quickly realizes this person's laying down because they're dead and they're missing their head. They have been decapitated. I imagine he gets, quite scared, and they both just hightail it out of the apartment building, and they immediately go call the police. When the police arrive, they go into the apartment complex, building, and they find the body of a deceased black female, like I said, missing her head. Homicide detectives come, they tape off the scene, they're looking for any kind of evidence. They don't see a lot of blood, if any. Really wasn't any blood. So any beginning homicide detective easily knows that this girl was not killed at this location. She was killed somewhere else, and then her body was brought to this abandoned building and just left there like how you would leave an old refrigerator or a couch. Now, when they were talking to each other, they suspected that this girl was a prostitute, because like I said, back in those days, this was a big time prostitution neighborhood, a lot of drugs here. They bring her down to the county coroner's office for an autopsy, and the medical examiner that's doing the autopsy quickly realizes that this is not a prostitute. This is a little girl. She hasn't even gone through puberty yet. Now, they don't have her head. It's never been found. It's never been recovered. So they guess, just by looking at her, that she could be between the ages of 8 and 11. And they're guessing if she had her head, she would be between 4'10" and 5'4". So we're thinking about a girl that could be tall for her age. This is an empty lot now. There is nothing no longer here, but this used to be 5635 Clemens Avenue. This is the site where the St. Louis Jane Doe was found. Since they don't have her head, they are unable to make a traditional facial reconstruction to put out there to anybody who might know her. They, of course, don't have the ability to have dentals. It's been almost 40 years now, and this girl has yet to be identified. Throughout the years that this crime has occurred, there has been one name that has always come to the minds of homicide detectives that investigated this crime. And that name that constantly comes up in their minds is one Vernon Brown. Vernon Brown was executed in 2005 for a couple of murders that he committed in St. Louis. He's also suspected of committing 2 others. And the way in which he committed the crimes are similar to the St. Louis Jane Does. Back in 1985, Vernon Brown was working as a maintenance man in a building when he ran into 18-year-old Sonetta Ford. He rapes and kills this girl. Somebody discovers her body. They call the police. The police, they're interviewing anybody who lives in the building, neighbors, so forth and so on. They run into Vernon Brown. They ask him, did you see anything? He said, oh yeah, I seen a Cuban guy. He was leaving the building really quickly. One of the homicide detectives had a funny feeling about this clown. They ask him if he would be willing to take a polygraph test. He says, yeah, sure. They take him down to the station. He fails miserably. On top of that, Vernon Brown's wife at the time told the detectives, my husband admitted to killing Sonetta Ford. He told me he strangled her with an electrical cord. Now, that detail of the crime was not known to the public. They didn't release the cause of death. For some unknown reason, there was a law back then, don't ask me why, where the wives or husbands of somebody that was suspected of murder, their testimony would not be allowed in a court of law. I don't understand, even if the testimony was willingly given. So he gets off the hook for that murder. So he leaves, he shacks up with another girl. This woman has 3 sons. So this guy, Vernon Brown, moves into his new girlfriend's apartment with her 3 sons, and over the ensuing months, starts to violently rape and molest her 3 sons. The mother did not know what was going on. The unspeakable horrors that this bastard committed on those 3 kids, those 3 little kids, forever warping their worlds. So one day, he's sitting out in front of his porch, and he sees a 9-year-old girl, Janet Perkins. He somehow lures her inside, maybe with a promise of candy or something like that. He tells his girlfriend's 3 kids to go inside their rooms and lock the door. He lures Janet Perkins to the basement where he rapes and kills her. He strangles her. He takes her body and just puts it in a refuse bin right outside of the house. Just right outside, right there. Very quickly, a passerby seen it and called the police. And the police questioned Vernon Brown about this 9-year-old dead girl that was found in a bin right outside his house. And he says, oh yeah, I did it. Just like that. Oh yeah, I did it. I was high on PCP and I blacked out. So for that crime, he was sentenced to die in the, I believe at the time, Missouri had the electric chair. They later went on to use the lethal injection. But for some unknown reason, even though he confessed to that crime without even being grilled at all, he never confessed to the murder of the Jane Doe case. He always denied it up until the execution date. Just always denied it. He said, I didn't do it. But the police, they feel that he would be the #1 suspect. And he also denied 2 other murders that they feel that he is responsible for. What's always disturbed me about the St. Louis Jane Doe case is, #1, nobody's really talked about it going forward 40 years later. It's brought up in local news, but it's not a case that has, in my opinion, reached the nationwide media news, CNN, ABC, CBS, whatever. Nobody has ever came forward to say, oh yeah, I know that girl. You mean to tell me a girl 8 to 11 years old just disappears off the planet and nobody's looking for this girl? Nobody, huh? Nobody at all? I find that quite upsetting and disgusting. There is a family out there that their sister, their daughter, their niece, their cousin, one day they disappeared. And maybe you wondered, maybe you watching this video right now, maybe you have a friend. Were you alive in the late 70s, early 80s? Maybe you lived in St. Louis, but maybe you didn't. Maybe you lived somewhere else. They weren't sure where this girl was from. They did some kind of an isotope mineral test to kind of determine during the autopsy where this girl could have been born. She could have been born, they're guessing, somewhere in the South. It could have been anywhere from Florida to even Texas, Louisiana, even southern Tennessee. That test, I don't know how accurate it is, but somebody out there, they had a friend. And you played with her, whatever games kids played. And then one day she disappeared. Or maybe her family moved. And you always wondered about your friend. And anybody in that family that you have this deep, dark family secret that nobody wants to get out. Nobody wants to say anything. Nobody wants to give any information that could lead to at least this girl's identity being found. Currently, I'm walking around. This is the Washington Park Cemetery, right next to the airport here in St. Louis. And 10 months after her body was found, the St. Louis Jane Doe, who's also been called Hope and Precious Hope, she was buried somewhere in this cemetery. Now, this cemetery, as you can see, it's one of those cemeteries that they don't have a fund for perpetual care, meaning that the only time they get money to take care of this area is by new burials. So volunteers and people that do community service come out here and they do the best they can to keep this cemetery up and going. And I did run into the caretaker here yesterday because I was looking for a name of another for a grave of another story that I'm doing, and that's what he told me basically about this cemetery. Later on, she was moved to the Calvary Cemetery in St. Louis. I originally did this video about, I want to say, a year and a half ago, and I forgot to include the location of where she was found. And I was in St. Louis. Every time I'm in St. Louis, every time I think about St. Louis, I always think about this girl. I always think about who she was. I think about the violent way in which she was raped and murdered. The horrible, horrible nature in which she was brutally killed. Now, like I said in the beginning of the video, your favorite true crime YouTuber, whoever that might be, more than likely did not do this video. I went scouring on YouTube just to see who's talked about this case. And there was a couple of smaller true crime YouTubers. The biggest true crime YouTube channel that actually spoke about this case was a channel called Gabulosis. I'll put the link to her channel in the description box below. Please check out that video that she did on this case. And I want to thank her for talking about a very sensitive subject matter, something that YouTube doesn't really take too kindly. They don't like a lot of people on YouTube talking about these kinds of crimes because, you know, they're not going to monetize it. You're not going to make any money. And heaven forbid, we can't have our, true crime monster millions of subscribers YouTube channels not making any money by bringing a light to a case. I'm just saying that's the way I see it. But anyways, a very sad case, a very, very horrible story. One that every time, like I said, I come to St. Louis, I always think about it. And it has always bothered me that this little girl has not been buried with her name. She is in a mass grave with other John and Jane Does who are unidentified. If you want to see the original video that I did pertaining to this case, I'll put that in the link of the description box below. Anyways, guys, I'm out of here. You know how I do it. Gotta hit the road, gotta make my wheels spin. But I will leave contact information on this end of this video for anybody that remembers anything at all. I'll put the number up to Crime Stoppers. Give them a call if you have any information on this girl's identity. I will see you guys later. Peace out.